Hello everyone and welcome to Bevan's Builds. In today's video I'm just going to give some real quick tips and tricks as far as how to insulate your ceiling. Now I meant to do this video before I put up my temporary lighting because I do want to say this is not how you do your lighting, but I am going to be making a video on my lighting because I want to discuss these hangers. They're fantastic. I got them on Amazon. They're made by Lithonia, I think. They're 15 bucks a piece, but like I said, I'm going to make another video on that. Anyway, today's video is about insulation, and I did a few different things on my ceiling just to show why I don't do them, to give you examples and so on and so forth. But anyway, let's just go ahead and cut to it. First thing I want to say, if any of you watched my previous video on how to insulate the walls, I had used that insulation that you see over there, which is the Pink Panther stuff. It's the 16 inches wide. The ceiling I did with that, which is also this, which is the 24 inches wide. Typically, I don't recommend doing a ceiling with roll insulation. The reason that I say that is the rolls come, if I remember correctly, they are 49 feet or 39 feet. I think it's 39 feet in length. So with that being said, the reason that I like doing it anyway myself is that each roll, I have very few seams in the ceiling, as you can see. Because anywhere that I do a ceiling insulation, what I like to do, as you can see right here, is I like to buy that, what that tape actually is furnace tape. It's for your ductwork. It's made by 3M. I'll put a link in the description below for that. And it's not a requirement, but me personally, to avoid any and all leaks, air seepage or whatever, anywhere that I have a seam, which you can see two more seams there, that was just a tear spot, and then I have a seam over there. I like to tape, and again, you don't have to. But here's the reason why I say you shouldn't generally use rolled insulation for a ceiling when doing it. And kind of step back a little bit here again. When you're doing it, for me, for example, I did it by myself. It's really hard to string that piece off. And so what I ended up doing, you can see over here, because I did half the ceiling one way, the other half the ceiling another way. I used these furring strips, and then I stuck them every so often. And then what I was able to do is I set the insulation down against the wall here. I pulled it up, and then I just pulled the insulation straight across. And by doing that, I had all these pieces of furring strips to hold it up in place. Because again, I'm doing all this work by myself. I don't have any hands. Another thing you can do though, and I'm hoping you can kind of see this, trying to zoom in anyway, is you can get a string and put a screw up, as you can see there. Like I said, I'm trying to zoom in as best as I can. That's another really inexpensive way to do it though. All it is this is what I used on the ceiling anyway. This is Greenlee nylon fish line. It's 2,150 feet of it, and I think this was only like $5 or $10. It wasn't very much, but the tensile strength of it is 85 pounds. So you can have 85 pounds of weight on that string before it'll actually pop. But anyway, back to the ceiling itself. Anywhere that you have a joint where it's coming together, as you can see here, as you have like a little 2x4 that's holding the joint together, you can either staple it around it like that, and I did this on purpose for an example. I still have to go back and fix it the right way, or at least what I consider the right way. But that is one option you can do for it. But the way that I prefer to go around the 2x4s and such like that is what I like to do, because I always staple all my insulation to the inside of the 2x4s. So anywhere that I get to a point that I am, there you can see it a little better now, that I have to skip over one of those points there, what I end up doing is I staple it on the front side of that board, then I go back to the inside and just continue stapling away. Again, like I said, you can see here, I'm trying to show you, I did the rest of the ceiling that way. I just did these three so you could see, and what it is, you really can't see up and through it, but like I said, that gives you a gap if you staple it that way, which is a way that you are going to be losing some of your heat. And the whole point of insulating is to not lose your heat, which is why, like I said, I still have to go back and correct those few spots. And again, that's also why I tape up my seams. Again, you don't have to, but I do. Now, on the top of this, you have what's called the rat runners, and I really wished I would have remembered to make this video before I had all my insulation up. But what it is, when you get to any of those points, what you would want to do, you just kind of unfold this so I can get nice and itchy. If your rat runner was going to be right here, you would take your utility knife, cut down into it about halfway, because what it is, like with on my ceiling, I actually have 4 inches between the top of the 2x4 and the bottom of it. So I just want to cut it down a little bit, and then you can just, because this is done in layers, so this actually will pull apart in layers. So if you cut down to about halfway, you can fold that up on either side, and then when you're sealing, you're up there, the 2x4 that's up there, you can physically cut it, open it, and set it around the 2x4 as you go, because you want to make sure you have a good sealed ceiling. But also, now that I have that piece laid out, that's actually a 9-foot piece. Typically, the best way to do to insulate a ceiling, I'll be perfectly honest, the way that I did it was actually kind of probably more difficult on me than anything, even though I thought it turned out fantastic. But typically, the best way to do a ceiling is to use batt insulation. This is, mind you, if you're having to insulate before you do anything else. The reason that you'd want to use batt insulation is it's typically like a 5 or a 6-foot piece, and it's easy for one person to handle and pop it up there. Again, the reason that I went with the way that I went with is because I got a huge deal. It was 35% off on all the insulation for the ceiling by buying it in bulk, and I could only get the deal on rolled insulation, is why I bought it. So do I recommend doing rolled insulation on a ceiling? I don't see a problem with it. Like I said, to me it worked out fantastic. It made for a little bit of difficulty trying to get it up there, but to me the end result was much better. And as you can see, I have very few seams. It was just every so often I had to use up the 9-foot pieces and seam it together, and then I would just tape it. But predominantly I have absolutely no seams in my ceiling, so it means I have even better or a lower heat loss than most people would have. But if you use batt insulation, just tape the seams together and you're going to eliminate that problem anyway. Something else I just want to quickly point out, this is the same stapler and the same staples that I used on my wall, and those were also used on the ceiling. Now, the last thing I want to say is the easiest way to insulate your ceiling, obviously, if you can anyway, and you're going to be doing it that way. If you're going to be drywalling it or whatever, honestly, the best way that I would insulate your ceiling, to me, because I have done it this way before myself as well, is I would do blow-in insulation. But that's going to be a case if you're going to be drywalling everything and you have access to the crawl. That is the most efficient way to do it, is to do the blow-in, but I did not do blow-in on this particular situation, and I'm looking at doing a drop ceiling in here, is why I did that way. If I don't do a drop ceiling, I'm going to end up putting a steel ceiling up there. And with a steel ceiling up there, I really didn't want to have to get up there and crawl around because I'm afraid to put any weight onto the steel. So like I said, again, I went with the rolled insulation. Anyway, again, I hope I answered everybody's questions as far as insulating a ceiling. Again, to cover real quickly, you can use the furring strips, like I said, to support it if you're going to use rolled insulation. Personally, I would say batt insulation is probably the easiest way to go in your ceiling space. Actually, honestly, the easiest way would be the blow-in insulation, but for the type of installation I'm doing, it would be much easier to do batten insulation as far as doing a one-man operation. If I had 2 or 3 people doing the rolled insulation, it would have really been a piece of cake, but I did not have that. So, as always, I hope this answers all your questions. I will be putting links in the description of this video below for the staple gun, the staples, the tape, the string I used, and all that good stuff. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below, and we'll see you next time on Bevan's Builds. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.